Hello again, everybody. This is Brandon Peppler. We are now on the fourth part of our extensive Harry Potter marathon, and right now we are getting ourselves ready for the Goblet of Fire. Now, for a lot of the instances where I've been trying to determine of whether or not some of these films are either like the theatrical versions or director's cuts, this is definitely very surely the theatrical version, because I don't even know if there is an extended cut. but so in this commentary, I will once again be doing up anecdotes here and there on trivia, plus bits and pieces of personal experience surrounding my own take on how I got myself immersed into the Goblet of Fire when I had it. But as always, this is going to be an audio commentary only, so I won't play back the film in its entirety or any of the audio due to the risk of copyright infringement. So the trick is once again, it is to sync up your version of the film, be it either through a streaming service or a physical copy such as Blu-ray or DVD. But before we begin, you are welcome to pause this commentary and then grab any treats and drinks, go to the washroom, and you may pause now. Alright, if everyone is ready, we will begin on my mark. 1, 2, 3, and play. So, in my experience with the Goblet of Fire, this was the fourth book that I had in my collection when I was first getting into Harry Potter. So, right around that time, I was very much at the height of the whole craze, and as so with the books, I've been wanting to get more from my grandparents, but as soon as time went on, I just became more and more concentrated on my studies in school, given I was at least around probably in the transition between middle school and junior high school. But I think this is where everything starts to really pick up in terms of the real conflicts involving the entire wizarding world, such as the case with how, given that this is the middle point of where Harry starts to become more mature and having to take more responsibility, given that there are people that are going to die around him, especially in the midst of himself being in the middle of the Second War. But, so, in the book, it kind of, at least in the introduction, kind of covered a little bit of the backstory of Voldemort's family, such as the instance of his father, Tom Sr., and of course his grandparents. I never registered that he was related to the Gaunts until right around when the later films came out, and with that, it was a very new experience. can't really tell what Voldemort really looked like. So, over the course of this, from what I remember, so around this time, it's at least around August, so it had to take place a little while after Harry's more recent birthday, and I wasn't sure how he ended up at the Weasley's burrow, but it's likely he would have stayed, with at least with permission, after the whole situation with Aunt Marge. But but over the course of the story, Harry's scar becomes a lot. It has more predominant use over the course of the film. Well, book, I mean. But in the instance, it's already been shown that the scar can detect dark presences. But so the port key. When I first came across that aspect, it was just incredible. Just how an ordinary thing could be somehow laced with a magic property, and then ultimately just could transport you anywhere on a whim just from touching. I mean, first there were brooms, and there were flu powder, and so the Quidditch World Cup, there was a little bit of history about it. So it's said to have been dated since 1473, and then every 4 years there is always a tournament among all of the different Quidditch teams around the world. In this instance, this is of course Bulgaria versus Ireland, given to which the Weasleys are fans of. But so some of the notable teams that played earlier included one of the first being Transylvania, being at least the first winner, or Flanders, given the previous winners, and then 1966 was Australia, 1974 was Syria, 1982 was possibly Brazil, and 1990 was Canada. After 94 was Malawi. In 98, in 2002 was Egypt. In 2006 was Burkina Faso. 2010 was Moldavia. And then 2014, Bulgaria won. I'll talk about redeeming themselves. Wow. But so I would think that the international excuse me, the international tournament definitely had to be something of like what would be kind of the equivalent to how we use the Olympics. It's this big international event in which all nations compete. Or how it's like football with like the Super Bowl, or baseball with the World Series, or I mean, you pretty much get the idea. I mean, but so so for those of you who haven't read the books, if you're wanting to know what the final outcome was, well, so Crumb, of course, caught the snitch, but it was the Irish that ultimately won, given their higher amount of points. When I first heard of Voldemort's followers being as the Death Eaters, I just couldn't quite grasp what the name was, but there's theories that's kind of surround the origin of it, given like how the snake is very much like a devourer, and that in the very essence it's like life and death. But I mean, just seeing the Death Eaters in this for the first time, it's just, I mean, just how they looked. They almost look like Klansmen. Klansmen as in the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, which kind of mirrors the whole aspect of racism, given that, obviously, the Death Eaters would pretty much be pure-blood supremacists. And I would pretty much think that there had to at least be some element of pure blood supremacy over the course of the Wizarding World's history. I mean, even to where that rather than wanting to coexist with the non-magical people, they rather fight them. Such as the case with, like, given the extensive history that has taken place in the Wizarding World, where the non-magical people happen to, of course, have been pretty much persecuted by I think I got mixed up there. I'm sorry, but as I was meaning to say, the Wizarding World got persecuted by the non-magical people because of how they were tied to magic, and plus, given the circumstances of the rise of Christianity in the civilized world, and that such instances revolved around the persecution of heretics that were believed to be associated with of course, magic itself being tied to devil worship. But so in the very instance of but I can understand why some of the magical people would not want to associate themselves with the non-magical people given to the bloody history. And I would think that the aspect of secrecy ties in with wanting to at least not be associated with the non-magical world, out of the need of safety, and plus even security, because there's always the thought of what would happen if our world ends up being having discovered the magical world, and with that, repeat history. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, because I know I mentioned Gary Oldman, who was Sirius Black. There were two other films that I know him well in. One of which, I'll make that three, but well, make that two films and a film trilogy. So, he was in The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis, which was directed by Luc Besson, and he was, of course, Jim Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, and then he was Bob Morton, I think, Bob Morton, in the remake for RoboCop, which I thought was a very touching reimagining of Morton's character from the original. I mean, just making him as a scientist and a researcher behind robotics, as opposed to being this cheeky, stuck-up, arrogant, yuppie junior executive. So from what I remember, that the Tri-Riz tournament ends up dating many, many years before the start of course, the instance of this particular year at Hogwarts. But it was ultimately halted because there have been many fatalities as a result of that tournament. It was only in this year, the 94-95 year, that it was an attempt to pick it up again. So from what I remember from Durmstrangs, that they are associated with being primarily students of pure-blood heritage, and that, of course, Grindelwald was also a student under Durmstrang. And that there was also a mention that Lucius Malfoy was considering having Draco Malfoy with the school. But so there was a deleted scene just before the mysterious figure approaches to the castle. So it involves, of course, singing along with the Hogwarts anthem from the students, which kind of seems to like dwarf the performances of our two other schools. So what we have here, folks, is Alastor Moody. Or, of course, the actor Brendan Gleeson. He's been in a number of films, and he is, of course, one of the most notable British actors, and, of course, in cinematic history. In such instances, he's been in a number of films, such as, of course, he's been Braveheart. Honestly, Braveheart again? Gibson. Let's see, he was also... I know he was also in a number of films, such as, of course, Mission Impossible 2 with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, really? He was also in AI, Artificial Intelligence, with Haley Joel Osment and Jude Law, directed by Steven Spielberg. 28 Days Later, Gangs of New York, and he was also in Bruges with Colin Farrell, who would ultimately be in the first Fantastic Beasts film. But he has an extensive resume in terms of films, given that his most recent works include Edge of Tomorrow, another Tom Cruise film. He was also in the recent Assassin's Creed film. And he's has a few television roles too, some of which I've never been quite familiar with. But so, I mean, just Moody's career as an Orr, it's incredible. I mean, given the fact that he himself had been pretty much been having a very rough career, and you can see he's pretty much all battered up, because he is pretty much the black dog among the Orrs in the Ministry of Magic. When I first saw these unforgivable curses, I was just, I mean, but but so when I first saw these unforgivable curses, I was just frightened of what, like, one being worse than the next. Well, one instance to tell those who were infected, affected by the Imperious curse is because they would have, like, glassy eyes. Such an aspect is that the eyes would appear to be cloudy and glassy. An element of being an actual notification or indication of having been under control of the Imperious curse. Um, now, now, in this case, the Cruciatus curse has been a very traumatizing one for, of course, Neville, given that his parents had suffered and that they were ultimately having been committed to St. Mungo's, which is the wizarding hospital. And then, since having been affected by the Cruciatus curse, they've been pretty much in a state of comatose, I think, from how it happened. The killing curse, of course, is the same one that Harry survived from, and it's been so. I may have mentioned, or may have forgotten to mention, that the wand wave for the killing curse is, of course, the lightning bolt configuration, which also matches up with the scar on Harry's forehead. Well, Oh, and speaking of St. Mungo's, um, I wanted to bring up that there was a post-credits scene in Chamber Secrets, for those of you who perhaps ended up missing it, but it actually showed Lockhart having been committed there as a result of having his memory charm backfire on him. and and of course he ended up whistling or humming. It's been a while since actually seen that scene, but he actually does the tune to Hedwig's theme. Oh, so so around this point, the Weasley twins have been trying to kick off their own business called Weasley Wheezies. But so I mean, at least around this time, even with having been not just like the usual class clowns, but they have been wanting to set up their own business based upon joke products. And in such the instance where like the games ended up exploring more, where they try to research into every flavor beans. So it's kind of like the aspect of like they wanted to go about their business and based upon the things they liked, but also go further. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? I couldn't resist just how the twins ended up just aging that fast. Someone's got a crush. I mean, you could just tell from Hermione's smile that she kind of fancies Krom, but she practically knows nothing of Durmstrang. And given that they've not only are pure blood wizards associated with that school, but whether there's a level of supremacy in the structure. I mean, Kragov himself was even put as, I mean, given that he's the headmaster of the school, he probably would have some kind of background with it. So, Robert Pattinson as Cedric Diggory. I mean, I'm not really quite familiar with a lot of his work, but of course I remember girls going gaga ever since the height of the Twilight craze. Holy crap. I mean, that is just ridiculous. But, I mean, I would think that this was pretty much his breakout role before Twilight, and it kind of ultimately just the height was just kind of went downhill from it. How could Ron actually express any jealousy to Harry? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it can't be right. I mean, out of everything they've done together, there would at least be some kind of understanding. I mean, even Harry's getting the... I'm very sure that Harry is getting the idea that something seems off. He wouldn't go as far as wanting to participate. I mean, given that, of course, he is a Quidditch player, but given the circumstances of the Triwizard Tournament, he wouldn't be able to play. And now this is completely out of character for Dumbledore. I mean, Dumbledore wouldn't go as far as pushing Harry up against the wall and sort of pushing him for answers. But so he can't back out? Even if he could? But even in the circumstances, it would have been likely he would have at least been given a choice to back out of the tournament, but it kind of seems like, with the circumstances involved, he is stuck for life. Well, he's stuck in the tournament until the end. Sorry. Oh. Then again, time will tell what Harry's true fate really is. But then there's the idea of why would Ron express jealousy towards Harry? I mean, after everything they've been through together. I mean, they've been best friends since their first year together. Exactly. He didn't ask for anything to happen. Well then, if that's how it's going to be, really, Ron, you can't understand, do you? Oh yes, Rita Skeeter. She, no doubt, is notorious in the wizarding press. But there is a little bit of a background on her that I've read up. She was obviously a Hogwarts student in her young age, and she was ultimately sorted into Slytherin. So in essence, it very much seems that she is very ambitious and she has a level of cunning, especially when it comes to getting her stories. But, of course, in her instance, a lot of her stories are pretty much fabricated. It's very unfortunate in a way, especially given that, I mean, you would think that a reporter of her caliber would actually get right down to the story, piece by piece, instead of fabricating things along. I mean, it kind of just sets a string of motions to where he's pretty much, well, where Harry is pretty much supposed to be this sort of like the quote-unquote oddball among the other three champions. So there was kind of like this whole, there's like a bit of a theory that's kind of been floating around. One instance where like Rita Skeeter could probably be like the personification of J.K. Rowling. I mean, given the fact that, I mean, like, what would happen if Rita Skeeter is actually a real witch living in this period? And that she ended up taking up the pen name J.K. Rowling as a means of getting the word of the wizarding world by means of print. But to be quite honest, I should probably bring up some of the background for those who are very new to the series. But so J.K. Rowling, or Joan Rowling, she came up with the story of the Potter books, and just from writing down bits of the story on napkins. And then over time, she built up the story as a result of her scribblings, and it came from there. And I think around that time she was, I think, at least a single mother, or I've Rita. Honestly, how can such a woman like that exist? But then again, there's always going to be a specific witch or wizard. There's always going to be a rotten apple. So with this fireside chat, I didn't quite imagine seeing Sirius emerge out of the embers like that, out of the hot coals. I mean, I would think that his face would just appear from the fire itself. in the common room, as opposed to like. I mean, it just seems so unsettling. But then who is a friend? He's already gone. Kinda hard to keep friends close when they're already starting to drift away. Such as the instance with Ron. I mean, to think that as loyal as Ron is, he could be very hot-headed. But, so, herbology. When I first had heard about it, I was always thinking of, like, okay, so it's kind of like botany in terms of the wizarding world. But I think it's a little bit more direct. It's just a regular study of magical plants. But I would think like most of herbology kind of revolves around like the aspects of probably like plants could probably be used for healing properties, especially with like not just potions but also just general use. You think that would be easy with Harry's hair? I mean, every time he gets his hair cut, or when he tries to brush it or comb it down, it just winds up sticking up again. That's kind of a bit of a thing with the Potters. The wild hair. And even his hair tends to grow back. Dragons. Yeah, that's what we heard the first time. Yeah. Whew. The whole Potter Stinks movement, that's not the only thing that's kind of been wandering around in the school. But there was also given that Hermione was being exposed to the treatment of house elves, she ended up creating the SPEW movement. I mean, trying to get the promotions out, but this was never quite covered in the film. Then again, it would make a lot of sense given that these are the Harry Potter films, and the stories mostly revolve around his point of view, his life. And I would think that the SPEW subplot would probably stretch things out. But so the backstory was that over the generations, the house elves were left to being as servants or slaves, quote unquote, especially towards like a lot of the wealthy wizarding families, especially the Malfoys, as an example. But there's been house elves that have been known to have been residing inside of Hogwarts, especially those that were working in the kitchens. Charles a ferret, get him out! Grow up. And remember to cute. So, I mean, when I first saw this, there was a lot of major differences with Moody. Like, in the book, he had lost a bit of his nose. He lost his right eye instead of his left. And then of course there was his leg. That's supposed to be wooden instead of metallic. I mean, such as the instance with Peppler, the original Hogwarts Care for Magical Creatures teacher. He himself had a wooden leg, as I've mentioned in the last commentary. But, I mean, Harry's not only just a talented flyer, especially being a Quidditch player, but he is also quite talented with magic itself. I mean, he would have known at least a number of different spells. I mean, defensive, aggressive, and even sort of like some that required a level of stealth to them. But, I mean, even such as given the instance of being just a wizard, I mean, he is still a very competent user of spells. Rita, you're at it again. Yeah, you got what you wanted. You stink bug. Oh, that's right. So Rita is also an animagus, but she is an unregistered one. Now, in terms of magical law, there was the concept of registering as an animagus, such as the instance of Professor McGonagall being one, but Sirius Black is one such example that was not. Nor was Peter Pettigrew or James Potter. But so those dragons, you would think of how exactly did that happen. Well, there's an actual spell to it. So, like for the instance where Moody was using the enlargement spell in Gorgio upon the one spider, there's also a counter spell to which incorporates shrinking, which is called Reducio. And I'm kind of wondering what... It's been a while since having read the book, but... I mean, just where the stands are, and that's how the surroundings kind of like a... I couldn't quite tell. It looks like some kind of a crevice. And they would have to, of course, have this put into, like, right in the mountains of the Highlands. Temper, temper! Yeah! Oh, good job. Great job. Oh, you can tell that this is, of course, padding right here. Just the extensive flying. Just try to evade a dragon. But then again, Hungarian horntail. It's going to need to be a lot of repairs done in those areas. We're going to need at least like a squad of witches and wizards to use the repairing spell. Where? Whoa! I wonder what it would have been like to actually see this in 3D. But so this was released around 2005. So it was around my senior year in high school, and it was already competing with the likes of Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith, and around that same time, it was also when Hannibal Rising was also in theaters. So, for those of you that are not familiar with Hannibal Rising, it's pretty much the prequel story to the Hannibal Lecter books. Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, and Hannibal itself. Another book series that I greatly admire. I'm given that there is a level of realism to it, given that Thomas Harris was I think he was a beat reporter, having done work going through all these different investigations. Everyone's saying it behind his back. Well, he bought into it too. Yep. Boys are boys after all. Hmm? So, I never had experienced the games before, but I actually saw a walkthrough of it involving. I mean, a lot. Just the layout was esoteric, and it kind of follows the story pretty close. But 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 I'm very surprised that Hogwarts never had a real class system, just as depicted in a lot of the English boarding schools. Because there's like I had seen the classic British film If, and that the college depicts itself having been a sort of like a class system, not just among the teachers, but also the students themselves, especially with the more senior students. Mm-hmm. Well, that'll be an interesting tongue twister. Oh. Wah, 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 wah. The classic waltz. Well, Neville's really getting it down, that's for sure. Even has his dancing shoes on. Well, just comes to show that he is still a good guy after all. Oh, talk about getting shot down. I kind of thought there was going to be a romance between Hagrid and Maxine. All fangirls. Fangirls, I'm telling you. Oh, that's good, at least. Ooh. Oh, burn. Rolling up the sleeves. I'm surprised it also transitioned in the Hogwarts Mystery Games. I know I've talked about it a lot in the past commentaries, but again, as flawed as the game as it is, it's still pretty good if you want to look at it from a story standpoint. You can already tell that he has a crush on Cho. But I'll talk about being shot down like that. And slipped out. Oh. Ran for it. The Patil twins. Oh. Wouldn't hurt to try. I'll bear that than nothing. The Yule Ball kind of seems like the usual high school ball of dance. I mean, I myself have never been exposed to any of the school dances, but having been in JROTC, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, it's sort of this little military sciences program that kind of goes towards like leadership and responsibility, and I mean, like it kind of revolves around to where, oh, but so the idea of the class is that it's not exactly what you would think. It's, from how I experienced it, it wasn't exactly an academy program, but how I went through it, it was pretty much like an extracurricular type of class. And it wasn't like promoting to enter into the military. It just it just aims towards but so in the instance of having, of course, been into the program, I spent 2 years in it before transferring out, and but having transferred to a different school that had no program, I felt really shot down. And I spent at least 2 military balls with the program. They were fine. Learned basic formal etiquette, and and to this day, it's just kind of been engraved in me. Don't be so sure. It could just may as well be. Professor Flitwick. Of course, Filch and Mrs. Norris, no doubt. Neville and Jeannie? And this is where we were first introduced to Wizard Rock. But so there was like an alternate scene for where it kind of bridged between both the dance and then this concert. Oi. But so the band that's been playing's kind of been expanded upon, and it even goes a little further on too, such as the enemy. More than friendship, yeah. So, but so there was another scene that kind of involves where Harry ends up eavesdropping on Kragoff and Snape, given the revealing of the dark mark, and that the difficulty of ignoring the call. I swear. But yeah, it's Wizard is an actual genre now, and a lot of it falls toward the sort of the tie-in with the Wizarding World mythos. Some of the stuff is completely outrageous. I mean, even the stuff even qualifies towards like innuendos involving like. I mean, I think there's even like been one instance where there's like a fangirl song to Draco Malfoy. The Dark Mark. Well, Neville had pretty much got it made. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Well, we expect everything that's been happened to Harry has been cruel. Clue. Oh, we all get a little out of our minds sometimes. And when I first saw this, I was going like, how? But I was surprised that Myrtle ended up getting into the bathroom in the first place, given that she haunts the one bathroom, the one girl's bathroom in Chamber of Secrets. Creepy. Hey, no looking. Okay, Myrtle, you are getting way, way, way too creepy. This is also like borderline pedo. Yeah, so mer people, on that topic, let's dive a little bit into it. There's like special there's like subspecies of mer people, given such the instance that the most notable ones are the ones that we know of are the more beautiful ones called the sirens. Those those sirens had been associated with living in Greece at the time, and that there was the window inside the prefect's bathroom is of course itself a representation of a siren. Weasleys, Wheezies. Well, of course he's tense. He won't know if the gigweed will help him in the process of this next test. So, given that Harry was allowed his wand again, I noticed, at least on his left leg, that there was like a holster for his wand. So, I mean, I was very surprised that they would allow their wands for that. But when I saw the game version of this, I was remarkably impressed. I mean, it kind of followed with like the first three games in terms of exploration, just diving into the depths of the Black Lake and even traveling into the different reefs, even the underwater caves. But so, back onto the different subspecies. So there is the species that we will be encountering called the Selkies. Now, there's also another kind called the Marrows, which were mostly close to having lived within the area of Ireland. By appearance, they look more fish-like as opposed to being nearly human. But it kind of dives down into like warm water versus cold waters. So that's where the line is for the mer people. Like the Sirens live in warm water, while the Selkies and the Marrows are more into cold water, such as the instance with the Selkies, which are the Scottish mer people. I was really wondering of how. I was kind of wondering if this was like some kind of civilization that was established, or perhaps an ancient one that ended up being drowned in the lake many generations before. Well, it kind of seems like the Selkies themselves, they are nearly human in terms of appearance, but the Marrows were way more fish-like. Well, it seems like he is taking a chance at it. Oh, so those creatures that were pulling down Harry just a little while ago, they are called Grindylows. So, oh, there we go. They're so that they're pretty much very hostile towards pretty much anyone except only having been tamed by mer people. Well, Malfoy. But so there is another scene that is going to be coming up very soon that was, of course, deleted. Well, it's not actually going to be shown. But in the instance, there is an extended scene to where Moody converses with Harry concerning of the next task at hand, and given that the event that'll follow is going to be a lot more worse, so it's kind of a bit of more of a foreshadowing. There's that song. But in the instance of the scar, it is featured more predominantly, and even mentioned more. I mean, especially with how it's supposed to connect with both the Dark Mark at the Quidditch Cup, then of course the Goblet of Fire, and then the whole entire tournament. Well, a wee bit sharp. Yeah. Yeah, about those. That's kind of one of the interesting things about like a lot of the treats featured in the Wizarding World. Just the idea of, oh, just how the licorice snaps looked. It almost looked like a mix between like piranha-fanged leeches that would hop around like tadpoles in water. And this is the pensive. That was not actually supposed to happen. I mean, he was supposed to dunk his head in. I mean, it's not supposed to act like how Tom Riddle's diary does work. So Kagarov was, of course, as mentioned, being a Death Eater. But I would think that even despite being attached with like the Death Eaters, you would think that, of course, there would be some supremacy in the Durmstrang school. Igor being such an instant. So, I mean, it's very interesting how it's revealed that Snape was actually being a spy. Huh. So Barty Crouch Jr. is actually played by David Tennant, who is, of course, pretty much been famous for being the 10th Doctor in the Doctor Who series. But in addition to that, he has also been the new voice for Scrooge McDuck in the recent version of Disney's DuckTales. I can remember that show quite well growing up. But so he's been in a number of films too. So he has been in How to Train Your Dragon, for one. A lot of the movies I haven't been quite familiar with, but as mentioned, he was the 10th Doctor. He has done Shakespearean work. So he's done a number of theater work too. Like he did 12 Angry Men, which is itself a classic play piece. Richard the Second. Oh, he's even done a number of radio and CD audio dramas. I mean, Henry the Sixth. He was involved in several of the Doctor Who audio dramas. See, he's also done a number of the Shakespeare works. He did narration, including the Pied Piper, Twelfth Night. He's done a number of voiceovers for games too, like he archival audio used from the 10th Doctor, Kinect Sports Rivals, Just Cause 3, and Call of Duty World War II. Yeah, but he hasn't done that in 2 years, so kind of rule that out. But you would think that the stars would probably deplete within the course of the year. So, alright, for those of you who saw that, they were doing an interpretation of, excuse me. So, the Bobaton girls were actually doing an interpretation of the Macarena. It was a very iconic, and memorable dance craze back in the 90s, and oh my goodness. Well, the red spark spell is actually called Vermilius. It pretty much functions almost like an emergency flare. It's even been covered in the Hogwarts mystery game. Now I think there is in the game version of Philosopher's Stone, in the original PlayStation version, I think there's like a variation of it called Verdimilius, but it sends out green sparks, and it can be used to knock down enemies. Oh, come on! Filch! So, a lot of this has changed for the third task. But in the instance of this, it is very much the entire layout of how it happens. Harry would at least know how to pass through the maze, know which direction is what. And the big difference is the maze itself. It's, from the look of it, it's supposed to be in this large, vast valley, but it's supposed to be isolated in the Quidditch pitch. And I think we all know of how large the pitch can be when on the ground. But so the major difference is that there are no major threats in terms of animals in this maze. So the maze itself is the obstacle rather than certain creatures, including the blast-ended Scroot, which is a hybrid creature, having been the offspring between a manticore and a fire crab. So the Scroots are supposed to be present, and as well as a Sphinx. So you can see that Victor is affected by the Imperious Curse, just from the look of his eyes. But in the book it's been indicated that it was Cedric that had been under the influence of the Imperious Curse through Crom. Yeah, there's that moment where, I mean, even Harry has human intentions of glory. I mean, there was that level of temptation, But he did the right thing for... Oh, so... But so, at least Harry did the right thing. It kind of shows that he is indeed a true Gryffindor. I mean, being not only courageous but also selfless. So we are at the cemetery in Little Hangleton. So, according to the description, Little Hangleton is a small village in Yorkshire, which the most prominent family living were the Riddles. The Gaunts lived outside in a shack. Ooh. And Voldemort... I mean, Voldemort looks like a very nastily deformed baby. But you would have to think that because of being so weak in power, I mean, he kind of almost looks like a fetus. Tom Riddle, Sr. Oh, jeez, that's just brutal. And at last, Voldemort has taken form once again. Whoa. Insanely wicked. So, from here on, Voldemort has been played, well, had been played, by Ralph Fiennes, which himself is an incredible actor also. He has been in a number of works, some of which include, from what I know right off the top of the bat, include Schindler's List, Sunshine. He was also in Prince of Egypt as Ramses II, and he was also in Red Dragon as Francis Dollarhide. He, of course, was also in Bruges. The Hurt Locker, Great Expectations, the Grand Budapest Hotel, the Lego Batman movie as Alfred, Kubo and the Two Strings as the Moon King, He's even voiced Voldemort in a couple of the games, too. Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix. That is the very essence of what Wormtail is. He's motivated through fear. On top of personal advantage. The transformation of Fiennes into being Voldemort is incredible. I mean, even seamless. Just how he is made is. I mean, even just a little bit of CG actually made the nose a lot more flat, and even gave him the snake-like slits. Even has a forked tongue. But, well, I mean, so, now from what I remember, Voldemort's wand was made from hue, but incorporates the same origin of Phoenix Feather as Harry's Holy Wand. But it seems like over the course of his transformation, Voldemort's wand has seemed to also transformed, and it looks almost bone-like, giving up the U appearance. Looks bleached like bone. It even looks like bone. Merciful. If you were so merciful. and thus the brother wands connected. It's just incredible of how this actually happened. Just those two wands connecting at the same time. That's just impressive. I mean, just... At one moment where he actually just... I mean, James and Lily actually talking to Harry for the first time. It just comes to show that he has at least managed to have a brief moment of connection with his family. But the trauma of having seen Cedric die is going to be something that will change his life forever. So, and so the dark times are ahead. Voldemort's return. And so the war, the second Wizarding War, will reach its zenith. But ultimately, it'll test many things for all sides. I mean, it's just a wonder how Harry managed to endure so much within the span of all those years. I mean, just being as a teenager. Oh, what's the matter? Not feeling so well? Ooh. So all these events were set in motion. Yep. Ugh. Just watching his face starting to warp like that. You can definitely tell that the effects are starting to wear off. It's scary to think that this was, of course, actually Barty Jr. that took the form of Moody. And seeing the real one? Mm-hmm. Ugh. Holy moly. I mean, just the idea of reverting back it just looks so... Oh. But, oh, another difference I forgot to mention was the reaction that Barty Jr. was supposed to bring. But in the instance was that Barty was trying to sway his father that he was innocent rather than proudly admitting his guilt. But there was another instance of where he, of course, ended up escaping. His mother, griefed with how Barty Jr. had been in prison, she ultimately had herself be put in his cell to sit in his place to allow him a bit of time out of the prison. Mhm. Well, I mean, it's very sad just to see all this unfold. And I mean, even that small eulogy does mark that, indeed, dark times are ahead. Accident? Really? But it would seem like it was not just them, but I thought I saw maybe even Voldemort's father. Please, really? So, so in the very essence of friendship around the world, it kind of it's it just kind of seems like almost a dream, just having just and to think that the wizarding world is so tightly knit together because of international relations. But in our case, in our world, everything just seems all torn apart. Rather than friends or enemies, and rather than having brotherhood. It's just disappointing that we are expecting so much of ourselves to be as good people, and yet, in the end, we are destroying ourselves. But, so... And so we have come to the conclusion of Goblet of Fire. I hope you enjoyed this commentary, and those of you who have listened, thank you for participating. And if you have a chance to leave a comment, please do, for any kind of requests, because I would like to do more commentaries in the future. Again, thank you for listening, and I will have part 5 up coming next.